I should have lived happy enough in Brobdingnag if my littleness had not exposed me to several ridiculous and troublesome accidents. One day, when I was alone in the garden, a small white spaniel belonging to one of the gardeners found me. The dog came up and took me in his mouth. He ran straight to his master, wagging his tail, and set me gently on the ground. He had been so well taught that he carried me between his teeth without hurting me, or even tearing my clothes. But the poor gardener, who knew me well and liked me, was in a terrible fright. Another time a hawk swooped down at me. If I had not bravely drawn my sword and run under a trellis, he would certainly have carried me away in his talons. And once, walking to the top of a fresh molehill, I fell in a hole up to my neck. I also broke my right shin against a snail shell, which I stumbled over as I walked alone, thinking fondly of England. The Queen often used to hear me talk of my sea voyages. She had her carpenter make me a little boat, and a wooden trough to put it in. Here I would row to amuse myself, as well as the Queen and her ladies. Sometimes I would put up my sail. Then I only had to steer, while the ladies gave me a wind with their fans. One day a careless servant filling my trough with fresh water let a frog slip out of his pail. The frog hid until I was put in my boat. Then it climbed up. It made the boat lean so much on one side that I was forced to balance it with all my weight on the other side to keep it from overturning. It hopped over my head, smearing my face and clothes with its awful slime. I banged it a good while with one of my oars, and at last forced it to leap out of the boat. But the greatest danger I ever faced in that kingdom was from a monkey that belonged to one of the kitchen workers. Spying me one day, he took me in his paw and held me in his arm as a mother holds her child. When I tried to struggle, he squeezed me so hard that I thought it would be wiser to give in. I believe he took me for a young monkey. He stroked my face very gently, then hearing a noise at the door, he suddenly leaped up to the window, and from there to a gutter pipe. Walking on three legs and holding me with the fourth, he climbed up on the roof. The people below spied the monkey sitting on the building, holding me like a baby in one of its paws. It even tried to feed me, and patted me when I would not eat. Many in the crowd below could not help laughing. The sight was ridiculous to everybody but me. Finally the monkey put me down and made his escape. I expected to be blown down by the wind or fall from dizziness, but a servant climbed up, put me in his pants pocket, and brought me down safe. Afterward the king teased me a good deal about this adventure. He would often order that I be brought to a table in his room, where I could sit almost level with his face. In this way we had many conversations. Hoping to get his favor, I told him of the invention and uses of gunpowder. I told him we often put this powder inside large iron balls, and then fired the balls into cities we were attacking, ripping up the pavement, tearing houses to pieces, and throwing metal splinters into all who were near. The largest balls could destroy whole ranks of an army at once, batter the strongest walls to the ground, and sink ships with 1,000 men in them to the bottom of the sea. I said I knew how to make gunpowder cheaply. I could show his workmen. Then he would have the power to batter down a town in a few hours if it refused one of his commands. The king was horrified. He said he would rather lose half his kingdom than know such a secret. He commanded me, as I valued my life, never to mention it to anyone any more. This is a strange result of narrow ideas and ignorance. This king, adored by his people, let slip from his hands the power to be the absolute master of their lives, liberties, and fortunes. I always had a strong feeling that I would some day be set free, but it was impossible to imagine how it might happen. The ship in which I sailed was the first ever seen from that coast. The king had given orders that if another appeared, all its crews and passengers should be brought to him. I was indeed treated with kindness. I was a favorite of the king and queen and the whole court, but it was under conditions that did not suit human dignity. I wanted to be among people I could talk to on even terms. I wanted to walk the streets without fear of being crushed to death like a frog or a puppy. I had now been in this country 2 years. About the beginning of the third, the King and Queen took me on a tour of the south coast of the kingdom. I was carried as usual in my traveling box. I longed to see the ocean, which had to be my only route of escape, if it ever should happen. I asked permission to the fresh air of the sea. A servant was asked to bring me to the seashore, leaving me in my box to nap. The boy went looking for bird eggs among the rocks. I was awakened by a violent pull on the handle on the top of my box. I felt the box raised very high in the air and carried forward with amazing speed. I looked out the window, but could see nothing but clouds and sky. I heard a noise over my head like the flapping of wings. Then I began to realize that some eagle had got the ring of my box in his beak. All of a sudden I felt myself falling straight down for more than a minute. The drop was so fast I almost lost my breath. My fall stopped with a terrible splash that sounded to me like Niagara Falls. I now realized I had fallen into the sea. My box floated about 5 feet deep in the water. I expected at every moment to see my box dashed to pieces or overturned by the first violent wind or a rising wave. A break in a single piece of glass would have been immediate death. After 4 hours in my despairing state, I thought I heard a noise on the side of my box. Soon I began to think the box was being pulled or towed along. This gave me some faint hope of being saved. The box struck something hard. I feared it was a rock. I plainly heard a noise outside, and then felt myself hoisted up. I called for help in a loud voice, and in all the languages I knew. I returned. In return, I heard a great shout, repeated 3 times. It gave me such joy it cannot be imagined except by someone who has felt it. Now I heard trampling over my head. Someone called down in English, "If there be anybody below, let them speak." I answered that I was an Englishman, drawn by bad luck into the greatest disaster any creature ever survived. I begged to be delivered out of the dungeon I was in. The voice said I was safe, and that a carpenter would come and saw a hole in the box to get me out. I said that was needless, and would take too much time. One of the crew could put his finger in the ring, and take the box up to the cabin, captain's cabin. Some of them, they thought I was mad. Others laughed. Indeed, it never came into my head that I was now among people of my own size and strength. The carpenter came, and in a few minutes I was taken onto the ship in a very weak condition. The sailors were all amazed, and asked me 1,000 questions. I was equally amazed at the sight of so many tiny men, as they now appeared to me, though they were my own size. I told the captain of the ship my story. To prove what I said, I took from my box a gold ring the Queen had removed from her little finger and given me to wear like a collar. I also had a servant's tooth. It was about a foot long and 4 inches wide. We landed in England in June 1706. On the road, seeing the littleness of the people and houses, I began to think I was in Lilliput. I was afraid of trampling travelers I met, and called out to them to stand out of my way. I nearly had my head broken for my rudeness. When I came to my own house, I bent down to go in for fear of striking my head. My wife ran out to kiss me, and I stooped lower than her knees, thinking she never could reach my mouth. I tried to pick my daughter up with one hand. In short, I behaved so strangely that they decided I had lost my wits. In a little time we came to understand each other, but my wife protested that I should never go to sea again. Unfortunately, she had not the power to stop me. But for now, here I conclude the story of the second of my unfortunate voyages.